Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're going to do another review of velocity banking in the context of accelerating our mortgage payoff. And I know that this is what people are looking for. And how do I know that? Because when I go into the YouTube Channelytics, there's a section that says, what are people looking for? And as you can see right here, it says velocity banking mortgage payoff. And the other thing that they're looking for is Korean velocity banking. Oh my goodness, my ego's being stroked, right? Humble brag. And another way I'm going to stroke my ego, humble brag, is talking about how I paid off my mortgage under 3 years. I made the final payment last week. I made the phone call to the bank, and I was like, man, these people are going to be so impressed, and I think they were. They're like, ooh, final payment. Now, again, it's not actually in the bank's interest to have you pay it off quickly, but I don't think the customer support rep cared. Or maybe it was just me imagining it, kind of like the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, where you just kind of imagined the whole thing. I don't know, but stroke my ego, humble brag. Anyways, so this is what we're gonna do: talk about velocity banking with regards to mortgage payoff. And what is velocity banking? All it is a debt payoff strategy using your line of credit as your main tool. That's all it is, right? And we only need two things. Number one is a budget, and then number two is a line of credit as your main operating account. Now, because we're going to do a review on the mortgage payoff or acceleration of the mortgage specifically, there's a little bit of nuances that you may kind of hear weird things on the internet that I don't necessarily agree with, but there's some nuances that we have to be aware of. So one of the things I've heard constantly on the internet is just always replace your mortgage with a first lien HELOC. And some of you have 2-3% mortgages at $200,000-$300,000, and you only have maybe like $50,000 of equity. And so if you replace it for a 9-10% HELOC with the first lien HELOC, it's like, I don't know about that. And people have actually come to me. I got emails where, one gentleman who lives in California was like, I have a 2 point something percent mortgage, and I was thinking of getting a 9% HELOC. And I was like, why? No, I didn't give him any financial advice because I'm not his financial advisor. But let's review why I say for most people they don't need a first lien HELOC. So here's a couple of important points that I'm going to go over. So number one is that the debt payoff order, right? So debt payoff order is extremely important, right? And the mortgage is the one that we pay off last, okay? So I don't know if you ever heard of this thing called the cash flow index. All it is a formula called the statement balance divided by the monthly payment. So let's just do a quick Google search on the cash flow index, okay? It's this thing created by Garrett Gunderson, right? So you can see this right here, wealthfactory.com. You see that formula, and basically, I like to think it as a ranking system, but it does have some context, okay? The number itself. A high number over 100 means the loan is efficient. A low number under 50 means it is inefficient. So whichever loan has the lowest cash flow index number is the one you should pay off first. It doesn't matter what the interest rate on the loan is, okay? And so if we just by that, let's just calculate the cash flow index, right? And I think a lot of people get mesmerized about the mortgage because it's like, tied to your home. You feel good about paying it off, but usually it's the one we pay off last, and this cash flow index will kind of tell us why. So let's go ahead and do this and put in the formula. So again, the balance of the debt divided by the monthly payment or the minimum monthly payment, 8000 divided by 266.67. This one is 15000 divided by 487.5. This one is 447.43. Whoopsie. Divided by that monthly payment. Oh no, I screwed up. That's the payment. We gotta get statement balance first, 24000. And then this one is 45000 divided by 488.37. And then this one is 50000 divided by 530.33. Okay. 937. Did I screw up? Oh yeah, I forgot a zero. Okay. And then here the mortgage is 200,000 divided by 1199.1. Okay, and then now let's kind of make this a little bit easier to read. There's a format cell, and then let's do number, 2 digits. Okay. So now take a look at this. You see how the mortgage right here has that highest cash flow index number, which means that it is efficient, meaning that for the amount that we're borrowing, we're not paying that much in a monthly payment. So think of it like this. Would you pay $24,000 for to get you pay it back, or I'm sorry, you pay back the $24,000, you get $447 back in cash flow, or you pay $200,000 and you get $1,200 back in cash flow, right? You get more bang for your buck for paying this one off in terms of cash flow, regardless of the interest rate. Now, there is a little bit of relation that the higher the interest, the more cash flow it usually takes. But the main other component is the time, right? So if you have an amortized loan and it goes on for 30 years, the monthly payment is a lot lower. But the thing that we also have to realize is that a longer time frame means you pay a lot more interest. So it's almost an illusion, right? And some people are like, well, don't pay it off early then because the monthly payment is so low. But yeah, if I'm paying like double the house, like, you know how people like to negotiate on houses like 10, $20,000, but you're paying an extra 100, $200,000 more because of, the loan interest. It's like, really? Like people's, why do they focus on that so much? And I think it's because cultural reasons, right? So like you go into a car dealership and you get the lowest price car, right? Like there's been studies that if you give people the lowest price car out of the bat as a salesman, they're going to be unhappy, but you let the buyer negotiate and they actually get a higher price than the lowest price, what's it called, car out of the bat, or for the car out of the bat, they actually become unhappy. Isn't that a little bit weird? But that's just how human beings are. Okay, so enough of that. So because of this cash flow index, you think of this as a ranking system. We follow the ranking, and so there's a certain debt payoff order, and you'll notice, and this is something I'm going to emphasize, is that you pay off the mortgage last. We pay it off last because if we're spending all of our time and money in this $200,000, we're only going to get $1,200 back. Whereas I don't know how much this all is. Actually, let me just kind of do a quick sum up. 8 plus 15 plus 24 plus 45 plus 50, right? That's 142K. And let's see how much in terms of cash flow this is. We get $3,400 of cash flow for paying off 142. Oh wait, not this one. All right. We get $2,220 of cash flow for $142,000, whereas if we focus on this $200,000 mortgage, we only get $1,200 of cash flow. That's why we got to focus on all of these first and not the mortgage, and the mortgage comes last, right? So this is one of the most important things we have to understand about mortgage payoff, that we pay it off last. Now, I know there are some people out there who have been really diligent and have been they have no other debt than the mortgage, right? And I'm going to talk about the two options that we have when we pay off the mortgage a little bit later, once we paid off all of our other debts first. So let's go ahead and pay off all our other debts first. So in order to do velocity banking, we have the budget. Now, we assume two things, right? We have the same income, even though more income is fantastic. I'm always striving to make more money, right? But I always like to do it in a stress-free way. So I don't like to work 100-hour weeks, but I do like to make more money. And the other thing too is that we don't need savings, right? So we just go, we do the exact opposite of mainstream personal finance. You go to Dave Ramsey and you say, "I'm not saving money," he's going to freak out because his first baby step, which he calls, well, I don't know if it's something about being a beginner, like saving money for beginners. He's calling you a noob. Is saving $1,000, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do the exact opposite, which is no money. And then let's go ahead and copy these expenses, right? We need to complete this budget, okay? And then we're going to have something called cash flow. Income minus expenses is cash flow, right? And you might be thinking, wait a minute, isn't this number kind of exactly the same as this one? So isn't it just some big illusion? No, no, no. We're going to increase this number because we need to do the second step of making our line of credit as our main operating account. And what is a line of credit? All is a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and use it over and over again, right? Credit cards, personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, business lines of credit. Now, my favorite is all of them because they all have their advantages and disadvantages. And right now, I have over $279,000 in lines of credit. But the one that people aren't familiar with is either personal or home equity. And people don't understand because, credit cards are shoved in your face, whereas home equity lines of credit, they're kind of there, but they're kind of not. And so the cool thing about a home equity or personal line of credit is I just go to a bank's website, I click a button, and then, it just puts money into my checking account. It's amazing, right? So what we're going to do is learn how to increase this cash flow number, and we're going to say, hey, we have a $60,000 home equity line of credit available to us. So think of it as a tool where I could go to the bank's website and I could just click a button to borrow up to $60,000 and put it in my checking account, right? That's all it is, okay? And it's very flexible. I can use it to pay anything, student loans, car loans, anything where you can't even use a credit card to pay off anything, all right? So what do we do now? Okay, so what do we do? Basically, we got to start moving some debts, and let's move the debts with the lowest cash flow index, which is credit cards. Credit cards take up a huge amount of cash flow, and one of the reasons is because of these high interest rates. So, for products like credit cards, you want to start off with them first, just because they take up a huge cash flow. And so, what is this? This is 23 grand. So let's go ahead and do that. 23,000. Okay. And remember, all we did was a debt transfer. So if this is 0 and this is 0, we'll take a look at this. This goes from 580 to 1334 on day one without making more money, right? And that's what we want. We want to increase this cash flow without making more money. And the other thing too is we're assuming these are day one fresh loans. So there's a little bit of unrealisticness here. But let's go ahead. And so what's the actual velocity banking strategy? It's your entire paycheck, your entire income into the line of credit. Because when you put this entire $6,000 into the line of credit, two things happen. One is the minimum payment gets paid off, so that minimum payment doesn't matter anymore. Number two is that the interest is minimized, because when you put that whole 6,000 in there, oh my goodness, the average daily balance is at its lowest, right? You're not just making the monthly payment or just a little bit more. You're putting your entire $6,000, and then you take your expenses out of that line of credit, right? You take your expenses out, and then after every single month, the balance goes down by 1334 with a little bit of interest, right? So let's go ahead and calculate the next month. And then next month's balance is the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus this cash flow right here, 1334.77. And then what we do is we take the average of these two numbers to get the average daily balance and multiply it by the interest rate, which is 0.1, and then divide by 12. And 0.1 just means 10%, right? And you divide by 12 because it's the monthly interest and they quote it annually. So you need to divide by 12. All right, so now once we have these three formulas done, we copy and paste, okay? And then at month 19, all our credit cards have been paid off. So now once our credit cards have been paid off, then we can figure out what the balance of this car loan is, right? And so we can go to loan amortization. So calculator.net loan amortization. It's my favorite loan amortization calculator just because it has a really easy amortization schedule to read, or that you can decipher and read off of. And so this is a $24,000 4.5% loan, 24,000. at 4.5% at 5 years, right? 5 years. Okay. And so here's the thing. I mean, look at the interest that you pay. It's only about 3,000. But if this were a 30-year mortgage, and let's just kind of do this for 30 years, okay, take a look at how much interest you would pay on a 30-year mortgage, right? So the length of time is really important to the amount of interest that you pay. So when it's 5 years, you don't really pay as much interest. Although I'm going to say this, the car dealership really values that car loan. Like if you try to go into car dealerships and say, "Hey, I'm going to pay all in cash," they're probably going to tack it on a $700, I don't know what they call it, like a bank fee or something, like some stupid fee to kind of make up the lost interest that they would have gotten with financing, right? So let's go ahead and do this again. 24,000 at 5 years, and then month 19. So month 19. All right, so month 19 is we're at 16 grand. Okay, so again, I'm gonna say this, right? You could put like with lower balance loans, you could probably put the entire thing in a line of credit. But when it comes to debt products that have lower interest rates, so this one has a 10% and a 4.5%, doing something called chunking, which we'll go over when we talk about the mortgage, is probably the most efficient, right? A way if you're thinking about terms of interest, like you might pay this off quickly, but pay $100 or $200 more interest than you normally would, if you unless the for whatever reason the car loan is a lot higher, the interest rate is a lot higher, and maybe you're subprime, then you might move into a line of credit. But then if your credit is bad, then it's bad all over the place, right? Like I don't think anybody would give you, let's say, relatively low interest rate on a line of credit, but a high interest rate on a loan if your credit is bad. It's probably going to be bad all over the place because they will see you as a risky borrower. But let's go ahead and do this and move this 16 grand into the line of credit, right? 16 grand. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. 16 grand, bam. Okay, now what happens? Well, just by simply moving this loan, we get this $447 back in cash flow. Okay, $447 back. Now, 1782 is our cash flow. 1782. So let's go ahead and write that 1782.2. All right, and then now let's go ahead and copy these formulas. And then as you can see right here, in 29 months, that car loan is paid off. Ooh, all right. And actually, let me do this right here. So 19 and then 29, I got to write these milestones. So 19 months, this is paid off, 23K. And then 29 months, it's 24 plus 23, it's 47K. All right, so now what we do is we gotta move on to the next thing. 92 means the loan is efficient because it takes up a low payment compared to the amount that you did borrow, right? You borrowed $45,000, $95,000 for school loans. What were we thinking? If it were me, I would just go to community college. But unfortunately, we live in a status-oriented society where people think, "Ooh, you went to." I don't want to even say Harvard because I think Harvard don't they give you like free tuition or something like that if you're come from a lower middle class family. I don't know, but I know that there are people out there who get $100,000 loans in basket weaving. That's my favorite phrase from I think from Dave Ramsey. He's the one who talks about that, and they can't even get like a job because it's all guaranteed by the federal government, right? So they don't have to do real underwriting on student loans. But let's focus on this and figure out at 25 months, okay, 25 months or 29 months, what's the balance of this loan? So we go here, we have to know the loan amount, 45,000. In my experience, student loans are usually 10 years and the interest rate is 5.5. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And what are we doing here? Sometimes I'm like doing this and I'm like, what am I doing? All right, so 29 months. 29 months. So now it's 36 grand. Okay. So let's move this 36 grand into the line of credit, and then we get $488 back. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Bam, right? And then now, okay, so this is going to go to 0. And then now, what's our cash flow? It's 2270.57. Look at this. We started with this $580 itty bitty cash flow or savings or whatever. And, here's the thing. If you have a savings account that's like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, even 4, 5%, but you got all these debts, right? You aren't really saving anything. You're well, there's two things that are going against you. Number one is inflation, but number two is that you're just making minimum payments on debt. So interest is accruing, or you're just paying interest, and you're not really saving money. In fact, I went over this in another video about how in extreme case, if we have such little savings left over a penny, and in order to save that $1,000, you actually have to wait 7 months and pay 24 grand in interest, right? So when you're saving money, it's almost kind of like a loser's proposition while you're paying off debt in most cases, right? Like there are some exceptions, but for the average person, it doesn't work out that way. All right, so now, okay, so now look, we moved this 36 grand into the line of credit, and our new cash flow is 2270.57. So 22, all right, so 2270.57. All right, so now let's do this, and okay. So what's our payoff? 46 months. 46 months. All right, so 46 months. And how much is 47 plus 45? I'm so bad. I can't even do basic math anymore. 45. 92K. Wow, so okay. Okay. So what's 46 divided by 12? So 3.83 years to pay off 100,000. Not bad, right? Not bad. And then now we go to the student loan. So what's the balance of the student loan after 46 months? After 46 months, what's the student balance? The student loan's 30 grand, right? So 30 grand. Oh wait, I put the wrong one. Did I do this right? 50,000 at 5%. So I think the balance is going to be a little bit higher. So this is, so let's do 46 months. So this is going to be 33 grand, right? 33 grand. Okay. So now let's go ahead and move this 33 grand into that line of credit. And I'm gonna go ahead and move this right here, plus 33 grand. And then bam. So what's our new cash flow, right? We gotta think about our new cash flow. So an extra $530, bam, 0. And so our new cash flow is almost $3,000, 2,800.9. So let's go ahead and do that and replace our cash flow right here. Right, it's here, 2,800.9. All right, so now let's go ahead and 59 months. 59 months. Okay, so 59 months. And so let's do 92 plus 50, 142K. Ooh, all right. So now this is the part where we've been waiting for, which ironically people don't understand that the mortgage is the least, how do I explain this? It's the one you want to pay off the I don't want to say pay off the least, but it's the one you want to pay off the last. Is that how you say it? Man, I'm going crazy, but it's probably because it's 5, 6 a.m. right now. But you want to pay this one off last, right? Because we need to get all this cash flow first, and then we're going to apply this cash flow to this mortgage. Now, we have two options in paying off the mortgage quickly. Number one is just making extra payments, right? So if you have a $1,199 payment, then your first option is put your entire $2,800 that you would have in your savings or checking account and dump it into the mortgage. Now, statistically, most people will not do this, right? Because if this is the default option that everybody knows that they know that they have it, okay? So if they know that they have it and this is the default option, why aren't they doing it? And the main reason why they aren't doing it is because we're afraid if there's something that happens to us in case of emergency and we dump that entire 2,800 into that loan, what if we need it? What if a car emergency happens, right? My car needed fixing, my 2000 and something Camry, early 2000s Camry, and I had to pay a couple grand to fix it because it's old and, cars don't last forever and you got to sometimes replace parts, right? So if I dump that entire savings into the mortgage, yes, it will accelerate the payoff, but the trade-off is that we have to be extremely strict with our budget. And you know what I call extra payments? Direct extra payments? Let me do this right here. Direct extra payments. And actually, I don't like the size of that font. Let me do this. Direct extra payments. I call it a UPS left turn, right? And very big companies, right, are smart enough to not make left turns on roads, right? They actually program their GPS to make right turns whenever it's possible because, and I forget where I read this from, the main one of the main sources of car accidents is people making left turns. And so if you basically dumped all of your money into the mortgage directly with an extra payment, you essentially made a left turn. And you might not think, well, that's not a big deal. That's how you get to the road. No, but UPS says don't do that, right? UPS left turn. UPS, yeah, right? To reduce driving time, you might thinking you're not going to take the quote direct route, direct extra payment to pay off the mortgage. No, no. So what we do is we kind of follow the UPS route with the help of a line of credit because a line of credit gives us a two-way street and it will always give us access to cash. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, right? And I went over this in another video. Why not just use the line of credit as a backup, right? And that's because one of the things that we want to prevent is something called segregation of income. And we also want to make it easy for our borrower to pay off debt. So, because here's the thing, you ever been in a situation where you use finance apps and the budgeting gets so complicated that you give up after 1 week? When you tell a person just dump your money into one place and it's going to help pay off your mortgage, that has so much value because when people overthink things, they go into analysis paralysis and they just don't do it. They just don't do it, right? So again, so direct extra payments is the default option, just like making a left turn on a road is the default option. But we're going to be smart, like UPS, and say, hey, we're going to know what happens when people make extra payments. They freak out and then they give up after 1 or 2 months and they never pay off the mortgage. So one of the things that we can do is just transfer pieces of the mortgage, which we call chunking, into that line of credit, right? So if we do this, let's say, this goes from 200 to 190K, we just transfer 10,000 into the line of credit and then use your cash flow to pay it off, right? So let me just go down here and then let's say here, okay, plus 10,000, right? And then you notice it pays off in about 5 months, 4 or 5 months, I can't even tell. But if we go into a mortgage schedule, right? So let's go 100 and put this in $200,000 at 30 years at 6%. How long is it going to take to go from 200 to 190? You could actually see in this mortgage amortization schedule It'll take 1, 2, 3, about 4 years, a little bit less than 4 years. Okay? And so how do we go from, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 months to 4 years to 4 months? It's because that one of the most important things is that we paid off the debt correctly, right? We paid off the debt, we increased this cash flow number, and then we attacked the mortgage, right? With our cash flow, with the help of a line of credit, right? But again, you have two options. Number one, direct extra payments, which is the default, which nobody will do because everybody did, then all that, everyone would pay off their mortgage quickly. And statistically, we know that they don't do that. Your average person knows that they have that option. Or you could do it with the line of credit, you know, just train people once they paid off all the other debt, put their entire paycheck into it, and then you'll see your cash flow pretty much wiping out that line of credit. And you just rinse and repeat over and over again, right? And luckily, we have a velocity banking calculator for this to kind of help determine our debt payoff. Now, one thing I do want to mention, okay, and let's just see where we are today or at this moment. So 59 months, what is the debt payoff? 59, 59. All right, so 186,000. Okay, 6%, 30 years, 1199.1. I think that's what it is. 1199.1. All right. So one of the things I just want to mention and stress is that most people don't need to replace their line of credit with a mortgage. Okay. So expenses is $2,000, I believe. How much is it? Yeah, $2,000. The expenses everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. Now, let's just say this. Let's say we had a 3% mortgage. Okay. So 3% mortgage. And I know some of you are have this situation. 843.21 is the what's it called? Monthly payment. 843.21. All right. So let's say you get a first lien HELOC and you have a 3% mortgage, and you hear on the internet, "Oh my goodness, just replace this with a first lien HELOC." Well, the HELOC is usually going to be from at least around 7% at the lowest. That's the lowest I've seen it in today's rates, to 18 max, because that's the maximum that you can charge, I think, according to federal law with the HELOC, right? And so let's say I get a 10% HELOC and I replace the entire mortgage with the HELOC. Now take a look at this. You might be, ooh, that's impressive because that's 5 years instead of 30, and I saved about 34 grand in interest. Okay. Now let's just do a $6,000 chunk instead, where instead of replacing the entire HELOC with a mortgage, we just do either, small amounts. I always just like to do something similar to paycheck, $6,000, right? And we saved 71 grand. Interest saved 71 grand, and it's a quicker payoff, right? So let's go back here. Do you want to pay 5 years and save 34 grand in interest, or do you want to pay it off in 4.2 years and save 71 grand, right? Save 71 grand. Like, no brainer to me not to replace it with the first lien HELOC that's at a much higher interest rate. No brainer, right? And some people are like, they don't even have access to calculate. Well, the calculator's not smart enough to know that you replaced a mortgage with the line of credit, but it is, because take a look at this $186,000 loan balance, right? And then I replace it with that line of credit. And then you take a look here, $186,000 loan balance. Oh, 186,000 transferred to the line of credit, and it calculates everything. And I actually learned this from Renatus a long time ago in 2017, where the instructor Randall, look up Randall Renatus Velocity Banking, talked about how if you just do the chunking method, it's probably a lot better for mortgage payoff because the interest rate doesn't really affected. And take a look at this. Let's say like I had a 30% interest credit card, 30%, right? Still better, still better than replacing your mortgage with a first lien HELOC. You see how crazy that is? Like this, you know, one of the reasons why you may even want to use a 30% credit card is that let's say you have low credit limits and you just want to increase that credit limit like a sucker, you could use a website like Plastique, and this only works with Discover and Mastercards nowadays. But you can use a website like Plastique and just keep making six to maybe $10,000 chunks on your credit card, and then they'll once you pay it off to zero, ask for a credit limit increase, and oh my goodness, it'll probably be really easy for you to get the credit limit increases that you need, to handle your cash flow. And so if you have low credit right now and you do this responsibly, then it should be really easy to expand your credit. And I say this as a person who has over $279,000 in lines of credit, right? So let me just reset this here. Okay. And then what is the payment amount for 6% again? It is 1199.1. So 1199.1. Okay. All right. So 1199.1, 6% at no $6,000 and 30%. Like, let's do 10 because that's more realistic with HELOC. And then as you can see right here, the interest that we pay is only about 27 grand, 4.5 years. But that's the thing that we have to focus on about the mortgage is, so here's really two really important things is the debt payoff order, and we're much more likely to use the chunking method than replacing with first lien HELOC. And here's the thing, I have nothing against first lien HELOCs, right? Because I paid off my mortgage last week, and so I'm gonna get a first lien HELOC. I don't know if I have rich people problems where I gotta decide, hey, am I gonna get a 90% HELOC or 80% HELOC or loan to value, right? And I might get 90, I might get 80, but that you want to have rich people problems because it's like it's much better than drowning in debt or just, not paying off your mortgage quickly. But what I'm saying is that you have to think about two things, right? The debt payoff order, because if you focus on paying the mortgage first, that's a bad, that's a no bueno because you don't get that much cash flow. You get $1,200 of cash flow for paying off that mortgage, which we don't want, that's too little, right? And the other thing too is that once we do, at the stage that we do pay off the mortgage, we don't need to replace it with a much higher interest rate line of credit. I don't know why the internet keeps repeating that. That's the cool thing about Renatus. And let me just tell you something about Renatus, right? This is where I actually learned velocity banking from, right? So in 2017, I registered for a program called Renatus, and they introduced me to this concept called velocity banking. They also talk about financial literacy, real estate investing, education. And I was like, wow, that's really great. And one of the things I learned from Renatus when I took those classes, especially with the instructor Randall, is like, talked about the difference between replacing and chunking. And he always said that chunking is interest rate resistant. So probably with the mortgage, you don't want to replace it unless maybe it's like the interest rate is comparable. So if it's like 6 to 6, right? So let me just do this. That's okay. So let me just do this 186, and I do 6%, right? It's comparable, but if the interest rate is 10, right? You see that it actually makes a difference. Whereas if you do chunking $6,000 at 30%, it almost is a little like, I don't know how to explain it, but like replacing your entire mortgage with a first lien HELOC, I don't really see the benefit, right? And that's what I was actually originally taught in around 2017, 2018 as well, right? And so, full disclosure, I actually do sell the education. I make commission off of it, but it's where I first originally learned it from, and that's why I sell it, right? So a lot of people, they just want to learn velocity banking. Is like, okay, you paid off your debt, now what? How are you going to build wealth, right? And that's why I got the rental house that I'm going to pay off in 2 years, and I'll just get another rental house. And you get, hopefully you get it at a discount too, because discounted house is the easiest way to build wealth. $100,000 discount or more, put in a couple, $10,000, $20,000 repairs. Now you build equity up front, and then once you have it paid off, then cash flow. You'll be flowing cash flow because I don't know if you do this or not, but the average, or not even the average, good cash flow in real estate investing is considered $200 a month. So if you ever wonder why there's so many videos about like reaching out to tired landlords for real estate deals, is because if you have to manage a tenant, do all the work and do the maintenance repairs, and your roof goes out and you have to pay more than $10,000, ooh, not a good time, right? That you're gonna become a tired landlord. Okay, so with regards to paying off our mortgage, we have to make sure that we pay off the debt in the correct order, and then if we're going to do the mortgage, we do it's much preferable chunky. Now, is there an optimal amount? The lowest I would just say do something that's kind of near your paycheck. I don't know if that's the actual right answer, but every time like I look at this calculator and I just type in a low amount. So for example, let's say I do 10,000. Is it 10? No, that's the income, right? So you want this to be as low as possible, but let's say I do 10,000. Okay, this is going to go up a little bit, right? 10. Oh, I screwed up here. Let me put 6,000. Okay. So if I do 10,000 versus 6,000, it's almost the same, right? The fact is that even if you use 10,000, oh, I'm sorry. 10,000, right? It's almost the same thing. It's just a little bit more. But realize the more that you put into that line of credit at a higher interest rate is really going to affect the amount of interest that's paid, which is why you don't, in general, want to replace the whole thing with the first lien HELOC. I say get a first lien HELOC once the entire thing's paid off. Like me, again, humble bragging, when you pay off your mortgage, or when I pay off my mortgage, or when I did pay off my mortgage under 3 years, humble bragging, stroke my ego. Thank you very much. All right, so that's just really the thing that we have to emphasize, these two things: debt payoff order and then chunking, right? So now let's go ahead and just write this. So this is 59 divided by 12 plus 4.5. So that in about 10 years, so 9.4 years, we paid off everything, right? So we paid off everything. So we paid off our 2 student loans, our car loan, our 2 credit cards. And how much is that? I think it was like 300, yeah, 342K of debt. So 342K of debt. And hopefully you're not in a desperate situation like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I don't know if you knew this today, but I woke up this morning and I was like, Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe with as Doctor Doom. Seems a little bit desperate because he had the greatest send off as Iron Man in Endgame, right? But hopefully you're not in that desperate situation like Marvel is when it comes to debt payoff and freaking out because you're living paycheck to paycheck. But again, this is why it's very important to understand how to drive the car before you drive the car. But when it comes to personal finance in the United States, for some reason, people just crash their cars all the time and they go, oh my goodness, now I want to learn velocity banking, which you don't want to do, right? All right, well, that's it for today. Again, we talked about mortgage acceleration payoff. Two things that we definitely have to emphasize that debt payoff order with the cash flow index, and also do chunking if it makes more sense. And replacing with the first lien HELOC only makes sense if you can get a comparable interest rate or lower, right? All right, that's it for today. Have a great day, and we will speak next time. This is Korean Atlanta Mentorship.